Okay, this is a YouTube video which will be a screen share talking about using the remote debug facility of Pydev within the Eclipse IDE. I personally found the documentation, which is on the Pydev site, which is this stuff, a little bit confusing, and I thought it might be worth somebody just going through some of the basics, some of the stuff that isn't explained on the page because it's assumed that you kind of know what you're talking about. So I think what I'm going to do is go through a fairly exhaustive process to show exactly what I did to get this working in its most basic form. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Eclipse. And I already set up a remote dev test project, but I'm going to set up a new one. It's going to be a new project, and it's going to be a Pydev project, and a conventional Pydev. It's not a Google App Engine, it's not a Django. We're going to go to next, and we'll call this, let's call it RDT 02. And we haven't picked an interpreter yet. You'll see that in a little while. So we are going to finish with that, and we've created our new project. Now what we're going to do, we're using an interpreter which I'm going to replace in a second, but we're going to create a new package, and we'll call that RDT. We're going to create a new module within RDT, and we're going to call that rdt.py, and we're going to finish. And what we need here is we just need something that we can execute. We don't really care much about going into the details of debugging. So what I'm going to choose is I'm going to use a template for a module, a command line Python program using the argparse module to get the command line arguments into it. And we're going to save that. Okay. So at this point, what we need to do is we need to go, well, what I do, what I would recommend that you do, is to go into the particular folder. I'll get the control C that, yeah. So here we are, this is my Eclipse workspace folder, and I created that new project RDT02. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into RDT02, and what we're going to do is set up a custom environment for this particular project, which is a little aside here, but I think it's something that's quite important to show because it's part of this kind of complete skill set of appropriately setting up your projects with the right interpreter version, and then a customized Python environment with the module dependencies, just the module dependencies that you actually need. I'm going to pause for a second while I figure out how I'm going to explain that to you. Okay, so I'm here on this page where I've been making some notes. And the first tool that I'm going to make use of is pyenv. And what pyenv allows you to do is to establish a specific version of the Python interpreter that you're going to use within a kind of location in your file system. And so what I want to do, now I've already installed pyenv. And what happens is you install pyenv, and then from there, pyenv allows you to install different versions of Python interpreter onto your system, but they don't get installed overriding the standard Python version and environment in your system. They just get installed to be available for use in specific locations. So what I want to do first is I want to specify in my project folder that I want to use Python version 3.8.1. Okay. Now if I type, so if I change out of here, and I do Python 3 version 3.6.9. If I cd into here, you'll see that it's 3.8.1. So 3.6.9 is the standard version on my system. But with pyenv, you're able to say, okay, within this branch of the file system, I want you to switch over to Python 3.8.1. Okay, that's fine. So now I'm saying I'm using my 3.8.1 interpreter. The next thing I want to do is I want, even within specifying 3.8.1, I want to be able to specify a virtual environment, which is a set of dependencies that are unique to my project. And to do that, the first thing I have to do is within this 3.81 version, I've already installed the module which I need. So I've already got everything installed. I already have pip installed. So this should just say that that's fine, doesn't need to do anything. Okay, it's already up to date. Okay, the next thing I would do is I would have installed pipenv, which is the tool which allows me to manage both my packages and my virtual environment. And again, all those requirements are already satisfied. I'm not sure about this wheels stuff, but it doesn't seem to be giving me a problem. So what I now want to do is I want to establish a specific virtual environment for here. And what I do that by typing pipenv shell. And you will see that I've now dropped into a specific virtual environment, RDT02. And you will see also that I have the location of my virtual environment here, which is under my home directory /home/ed.local share virtual ems, and then this is the name of the virtual environment. So I've created my virtual environment now, and if I wanted to install custom packages here, I would simply, I think of one I could install. I could simply install that package, and that package is locally installed for this project. This takes a little bit of time, so I'm going to pause. It takes some time because I'm actually VPN'd into my work. So that package was installed. And if you look, we have a couple of files, pip file and pipfile.lock. If we cat on the pip file, you'll see that we've actually installed the Django package. And you can use this pip file to effectively reliably recreate your virtual environment if you were to deploy this to another server. Okay, so we've now created this virtual environment and we have this interpreter. What we need to do now is associate this custom Python interpreter with its custom modules to the project. So first of all, we have to go into window preferences, go down to Pydev, and then go to interpreters, the standard Python interpreter, and we're going to browse for a Python executable. A little gotcha here. This is well, it might not be a gotcha for you. I haven't figured this out, but I have to go to the path /home/ed/.local, and I'm not getting my hidden folders showing up in my selector here. So I actually had to create a symlink, which is somewhere in here. Yeah, here it is, .local. So you see dot as in DOT instead of the actual dot symbol. So we're going to go in here, and it's this RDT02, go into the bin, and we're going to select our Python interpreter, and we're going to call this RDT02. It's just the symbolic name of the interpreter. Folders to be added to the system Python path. We leave all of those. So what we did is we added this interpreter into the set of available interpreters within a Pydev in Eclipse. But what we haven't done is associated that interpreter with the project. So we have to come over to the RDT02 project, go down to its properties. It's already on Pydev interpreter / grammar, and our interpreter is going to be RDT02. And so now that has been applied, and now we are using our custom interpreter that we built with our project. So in order to use the debugger remotely, we have to be able to import the Pydev debug module into our interpreter. So what we actually did before is we installed Django with pipenv install Django. Okay, what I'm going to do is I want to take that out now. So can't remember how to do that. I'll just bear pipenv and hit enter. And so it's uninstall. So pipenv uninstall Django. Just keep that up. Okay, now I can't remember exactly what the name of the module is. I'm going to do a pip search on Pydev, and it's actually pydevd. So we're going to do a pip install of pydevd. So now we have that in our code. Next thing we're going to do, we've got this this script that we created from a template, and what we're going to do in this case, normally you would be talking about running the script on a remote system and connecting that system, the script on that remote system, back to the debug server. But for now, we're going to run this script where it is, but we're going to kick the script off from the command line rather than kicking it off from within Eclipse. And so what I'm going to do here, when you kick it off outside of Eclipse, you have to explicitly import the pydevd module, and then you have to run pydevd.set trace. Now, if it was remote, you would potentially have to define the host where the debug server is running, and we'll see this in a minute, and the port, but for this case, we're running on the local system, so we don't have to define any of that. So we're going to save that module. And what we're going to do here is we are going to set a breakpoint right there. And so here we are. We have we've got our script in our project. We haven't defined any debug configuration runs within Eclipse because we're going to run this remotely. So what we need to do now is we need to explicitly switch over to the debug perspective of Pydev. And we're going to go into the Pydev menu, and we're going to start the debug server. And this is listening on port 5678. Then what we're going to do, and I'm hoping this works, and if it doesn't, we will have to do something about it. We're going to cd into the package file, and we have our rdt.py. So we are going to basically, and we're going to put in an argument. Need to make sure I actually saved it. I've saved it, yeah. So let's see what happens when I do this. So that's looking good. It's kind of started but gone nowhere. If it wasn't in debug mode, it would have run through to completion and just printed out the version of the script. But if we go over to Eclipse, you'll see that we have actually started a debug and that we are currently at the line 22. So if we can simply step through this, and you can see on the right we have all of our normal stuff when you're running a debug. So what we have done is we have kicked off a process external to Eclipse, and we've had that process connect back, or that Python interpreter, if you want to call it that, which is what it is, connect back to Eclipse. And I don't quite understand how it knew to associate this source code in particular with the debug session, but it did. And because remember, what's going on with the debugger is it is associating the execution of what must be compiled Python with what is essentially source Python running in the IDE in Eclipse. So I just wanted to do this video as the simplest possible example of using the remote debugger, and hopefully also give you a little bit of an insight into one way that you can effectively set up your Python project environment using pyenv and pipenv, which I think is absolutely the best way if you want to be able to run independent Python versions per project and then have independent package installations per project. So I'll stop this video right now, and I'm going to make some follow-ups where I'm showing what actually happens when you do execute remotely. And ultimately what I want to do is to be able to execute inside a Docker container. That's what I'm aiming for, is to be debugging my scripts deployed to Docker. Okay.